Hello, I'm Riley Wilson, and welcome to the Band of One podcast. This podcast is designed for anybody that wants to start, develop, or grow a solo or small group career. I've got over 50 years of experience performing live, and I'll use not only my tips, but the tips I've discovered from other folks that do this in their neck of the woods. The goal here is to make this actionable, fun, and maybe even profitable. Let's get going. Once again, welcome, if you would please, my guest today, Alice Osborn. Alice, once again, welcome.
Thank you so much, Riley.
So I want to talk about the kind of the nuts and bolts of being a solo performer. If you go back after that very first gig, right, you got some nerves, I would assume, right? But you being Alice, you just persevered through that. How did you feel at the end of that first gig?
Well, I thought, wow, I got money. People actually gave me money. That was quite powerful, and I said I have to do it again. And the sound
Yes.
worked really well. But there's been times where my sound hasn't worked. I haven't had the right chord. I forgot this. I forgot that. And you're all on your own. Um, and I've had a situation where the venue itself had a couple chords, but then they used that against me later. They said, well, she wasn't prepared. So that was what I was worried about, where I would be told later, well, she's not prepared and we don't want her back. And that did happen actually. But uh, so it was always like, how can I be double prepared? Have my all my equipment, have this, have that. But things happen, and sometimes you can be with someone who's very forgiving, and other times they can be pretty mean. So, and you don't know what the situation is. But I've had all kinds of situations where good ones, bad ones, in betweens, and sometimes they don't ask you back, and sometimes they do. But yeah, there's no guarantee. I mean, I guess that's kind of like life or dating. I don't know, or jobs interviews or
Yes,
something.
yes, there's no guarantee. But the bottom line is at the end of the first gig, you felt good, like, hey, I could do this again. And I got money.
Yeah, I got $30. It was.
Which is always a tremendous validation. And I think for anybody that's listening to the podcast or watching this online, the idea of performing for others, while you might be a little scared in the beginning, if you'll just get out there, put yourself out there and see what happens, a lot of times you'll be stunned and amazed. Now let's revisit the whole gear conversation for just a moment, because you play acoustic guitar or electric guitar or what?
Acoustic guitar.
Okay, okay. Um, and do you bring an amplifier with you, or do you play through a PA system that's provided at the venue, or how do you do all of that?
I have a regular, very, very simple Bose tower, and then I have a mixer, and then I have a harmonizer. So I have to have that all set up with my chords, and I put little sticky dots to make sure I put on the right, make it the order goes well. And if there's something not plugged in, I usually, I've gotten really good about figuring that out. And I've had to change batteries in the middle of it. That's happened where the battery just goes out.
And that's a battery and what now?
Oh, the battery in the guitar.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
battery
yeah,
in the guitar would go out. Sometimes a plug will not work. You plug it in and it won't work because the
yeah.
outlet is charged. You have to do your own troubleshooting. So it really taught me how to do troubleshooting, learn about electronics, learn about this. I mean, there's nobody to help me. I
Yeah.
did all. I, brought all the equipment in, brought all the equipment out. The fun part was like going up steps, and I think the worst one was I won't say where it was, but it was around Raleigh, and that was my worst. That was my worst. It was an outdoor thing. I was an hour late. I couldn't find parking. I had to pay for parking. It was $8, and I made $8 in tips. I had no cover. It was all sun. And then when I tried to leave, I got shot out onto the street, and then I had to make a whole U-turn to get back to my equipment. I mean, it was quite horrible. And then I bruised my leg, and I had a cut on it. I mean, but I still played. So it was really a hard. Then and I skipped. Somebody else did a meeting for me because I had that was a during the day gig, so I had to have a substitute for my regular book club. And the woman who was in charge of the book club, she got sexually harassed because I wasn't there. I mean, it was like, oh my god. What is that?
A series of unfortunate events, we might say.
I know, and I said, I'm not going back to this one.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think every musician over the years has got horror stories. There used to be a club in Myrtle Beach. You talk about South Carolina called the Carousel Club. This is way back in the 70s. And I was playing with a band that we had a couple of nights we opened for Iron Butterfly in 1975. And this club was on the second floor of a building, and they had about 20 wooden steps that you had to carry the gear up. These guys had a Hammond B3 organ in a road case. And
Wow.
two of the skinniest roadies I've ever seen in the world that are lugging this 400-pound monster up the steps outdoors. It's 95 degrees and 100% humidity. You've lived in Myrtle Beach, you know exactly what I'm talking
Mhm.
about. And it was probably one of the worst load ins that I've ever seen. And so I completely get that. Um, I've talked to folks that have redundancies. Think, for example, I'll show you something you can see here. I ordered a whole bunch of these Maxell little tuner batteries from Amazon the other day. So I've got plenty of tuner batteries, and I always try and be sure to have those. But I think all of us have had times when the equipment hasn't worked for whatever reason, and that is frustrating. But you just keep pushing on. Um, and you mentioned that you had that little Boss amplifier, the Roland amplifier that runs without batteries, and you've used that recently as well.
Yes, especially for I had a farmers market gig here in Truckee, and there was no electricity, and there was also bring your own umbrella. We don't have umbrellas for you. So I had to bring my own umbrella, and I'm glad I did. I'm pretty fair skinned, so I had that. My roommate helped me put it into the car. He just yanked the out of the patio. It's like, you got your umbrella. My other roommate's like, what are you doing? We're like, nothing. just taking we're taking
Sometimes
a
you
bring
have to take extreme measures. Absolutely.
take the umbrella. And then I think it yeah, and then I think that was that same farmers market they had me play for the on July 4th. And I didn't know that there was the big July 4th parade in downtown Truckee, and that's where everyone was. And I said, well, I'm not doing that again. I just didn't know. I didn't know the local culture. So
Yeah,
I'll never play July 4th um in this area because the big parade and
yeah.
everybody was at the parade. I didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's always live and learns. There are places here in Dallas, for example, that I don't like to play just because it's not a fun gig and they hassle people going in and out. But I think one of the great takeaways from our podcasts that we've been talking about is if you want to do it, simply get out there and do it. Put yourself out there, make an effort, and it's going to happen. Um, and it looks like I see you pictured with a Taylor guitar. Are you a Taylor guitar girl?
I am. That's my second. Oh, how many Taylors have I had? Two. Yeah, two.
Yeah. And they work well, don't they?
Oh, they're fabulous. Yeah, the first one was I actually talked to my luthier Terry over the holidays, and he remembered my guitar from 2016. I was like,
Is
that's so
this Terry
sweet.
McInturf?
No, it's not.
Okay. Okay. It's a different Terry.
Different
Terry's in
Terry.
Durham. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
different Terry. Yeah, he remembered my guitar, which was very sweet. I was like, oh, you remembered it had the crack down the middle, and he's like, yeah, I remember that. And I said, yeah, it really was a stinker because I had to buy another guitar because you kept that guitar in the shop for 2 months. And um, but anyway, I spent so much money repairing that guitar, sold it for $500. I got it for 800. And let's see, and then I Mother's Day 4 years ago, it'd been 2020. Yeah, I got my current one. Just got the strings all nice and redone, and it sounds great. And I've got a couple other guitars since then, but it's my favorite.
Great, great. And when you playing acoustic guitar, obviously you're running the acoustic guitar into either the small Roland amplifier or the Bose system. Are you a finger picker girl? Or you play flat pick, or do you do both? Or what? That's
Mostly, I would say using a pick because I felt when I was finger picking, nobody could hear the guitar. So I turned from picking, and but a lot of people will say, well, they'll make you people listen to you, but then I never quite had the strength, and that's something to really, really for the guitar to sound out. So I use a pick, and
yeah, yeah.
that's yeah, I'd like people to hear me.
No, I completely get that. I do some fingerstyle live, but not much for that very reason. Finally, one of the interesting pieces of gear that nobody talks about, microphones. Do you have a favorite microphone you like to use?
Oh yeah, I have one that is, oh, I can't remember the name of it, but it's, let's see. I can just, I think it's right over here. It was
Sure,
a guitar.
sure.
Yeah, let me go.
Why?
I got it right close by. I never am too far away from it.
The reason I asked that is I used dynamic microphones for much of my career. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I got a Blue Encore 300, which is a condenser microphone. And wow, what a difference it makes. I don't have to sing really hard. And if I have a gig that goes extra innings, I played one job 3 years ago that was an 8 hour gig.
Wow.
8 in the morning, 8:30 in the morning until 5:31 in that afternoon. I was able
That's
to take breaks in there, of course, which was necessary. But if I have those kinds of jobs, it's nice not to have to sing that hard. What's the microphone that you have there?
Oh, it's a EV-ND-76. It's my favorite.
Yep, yep. The Zendimes, they're marvelous microphones. I had one. In fact, I had one up until that's the one that I had before the Blue, and for some reason it just conked out. And I asked them about repairing it. They said you can't repair these. And I said, in other words, I've got a paperweight or a toy for my grandkids. And they said, yes, you do, which was frustrating. So anyway, so looking back on it now, there's probably been two or three watershed moments for you as a musician in your life. Um, uh, what do you think the two or three moments would be that kind of have allowed you to be where you are right now? You're a singer, songwriter, poet, all these different things, but you're a recording artist with 3 CDs under your belt. What do you think were the two or three things that allowed this to happen, if you will?
Well, the first time that I really felt like a musician was when I I had to stay the night, overnight, because I didn't want to drive home. And I I was like, wow, I'm a real musician because I'm spending my money at a Days Inn for a gig, and that really, that professionalized me. I said, I'm a real musician because I'm spending money to stay at a
Yeah.
motel for a gig. And I had not done that before. So that was powerful for me that first time, which was, I believe, like 2018, something like that. And when I was invited to, okay, so that's one. When I was invited to perform at Donner Memorial State Park and over at Donner Ski Ranch, the first time, that would have been, uh, February 22. I had to learn how to put my guitar on a plane. And then that's another level of, you're flying across the country, got to get a rental car, you're doing this all by yourself, and you have to figure out how to get your guitar in the carry-on the carry bin. And I had no idea how this was going to work, and nobody was helping me. Everyone's like, oh, I don't fly. Oh, I have friends who give me a guitar. Oh, I use a little one, and they'll just pack it in the little case. None of that was true. I went to YouTube, and that was the only place I learned how to do it. So it was like none of my friends, and I asked, I was like, and they said, well, I have a packable, fold up guitar. I was like, well, that's not going to help me. So
What did you end up doing? Because I know several of our listeners, my buddy John Byron Haney's done a fly out date. I've done some fly out dates with guitars as well. But what did you end up doing for this particular show?
well, I ended up, my carry-on was my guitar, and my purse was, those were my two carry-ons, and then my suitcase had to be checked. So you
Yeah.
have to check. That's how it is. And then if you can get priority boarding, I didn't do first class, but I paid like $40 to get priority boarding, which would mean in group 2 or 3. So then that way you are able to have, the carry, the overhead space, and the
Yeah.
overhead space will definitely fit guitars. And I never had a problem. Everyone was so kind. And it was during the big ski weekend. Over here in California in the north, their President's Day week is where everybody and their silly cousin comes out to Tahoe and skis. So that was the weekend I was first here. And I thought the planes were jammed because of the Donner Party. Like, no, Alice, that's because it's Lake Tahoe, you dum dum. And it was so crowded. I got the last seat on the plane, and all the hotels were $400 each.
Wow.
I got this, yeah. And then my friend was supposed to put me up and she said, "Oh, can't because I have friends from San Jose." I was like, "Thanks, but you can get a hotel." I'm like, "Yeah, it's $400." But I got a place for 150 and I had to have a shared bathroom and that was the cheapest I could find. And then I spent the night with a new friend who liked my music. That was another watershed moment where my friend Laura, I had just met her. She dresses up and is Mrs. Breen of the Donner Party, and she met me at Donner Memorial with her friend Diane. And Diane and Laura are still my friends, and they took me in. They said, "Okay, we're gonna come and have a beer with us, and do this with us, and do this with us. And oh, you spend the night at my place because I don't want you to have to share a bathroom again. That's really not cool." So and that was a watershed moment because that gave me trust in Truckee. I said, "Are these people for real?" And Laura said, "Yeah, we're for real. This is how we are. Why are you even questioning that?" I said, "Well," and she said, "Okay, okay, I got you, I got you." And I stayed with her the next time I was in Truckee, and she's been an incredible friend. So that was a watershed moment for me to make the leap to believe that Truckee was my place, and Laura was part of it, a big part of it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So
Yeah.
let me ask a couple of kind of parting questions. First of all, what advice would you give to somebody that's maybe had a career like yours, that's worked in corporate world or done traditional things with academia, job, all that kind of thing, and decides, you know what, I want to play music, but I'm a little scared. I don't know if I could do that. What advice would you give somebody along those lines?
Sure. So find a teacher, find someone that you trust who can be your coach, your instructor. You don't need to stay forever with them, but find a teacher. And the next thing is to find a community. So I found out here the Yosemite songwriters retreat community, and I found them through on I did online virtual shows, and tonight I'm also doing an online virtual show. So find a community, and fortunately in North Carolina there's a ton of music communities. So find people that are better than you and join the club. Just, if there's a songwriting group, an organization, join it. And I've always been a joiner, so that's something that always came easily for me. I was a writer. I'm a writer, still a writer, but I joined the North Carolina Writers Network, and then a lot of writers in the network are also musicians. So that's then you ask people you trust, well, how did that happen? And here in Truckee, I before I even moved here, I was establishing myself within the music community. So I already learned from before. So when I got here, I already knew 50 some people, and it was so funny. I had a date going to it was one of those things, it was the Truckee Air Show, and this guy had been here 20 years, right? And he's like, "Oh, I know people." Well, I knew more people than he did, and I was here 3 weeks. So I don't think he liked that very much. We stopped dating for that. But yeah, I mean, and I was like, well, I put my heart and soul into connections and networking and really, really, you know, um, doing it, and friend requests and, talk. But that's who I am. So
Well,
that's
I was going
my
to ask
my
about this because it sounds like your business background certainly has helped you in terms of kind of looking at the big picture, whether it's joining a songwriting group or coming to a town and asking, where's an open mic or where can I perform? Would you say that the business background helped in terms of that with a career, solo career?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very resourceful. I'm very critical thinker. I'm very like, if something doesn't work, what else can I do? Like, so you can't. I think it comes from a fear of being fired. So I got fired. Been fired a couple times, and I'm thinking, could I have done better? Or like have more diverse skills where they can't fire me because I have these skills where it would be a bad thing because they would be missing something. So I'm always trying to be marketable, and that also helps because I mean I could have been a stay-at-home mom and had not put my kids in daycare, but I really just had this fear. What if my marriage doesn't work out? What if something happens? What if? And I mean, look, so I believe, and this goes for more women than men, perhaps, but if you have a spouse that makes more money than you gotta, as a woman, as a mom, you gotta work on skills. You gotta have stuff that you can do that is marketable and makes money. And and I did it within my art. So writing is my art, and I did it within my art, and that's what I've told my kids, because one kid loves to garden. I said, okay, horticulture, agriculture, landscape architecture, and he's like, yeah, cool. Can I do it? I said, you just be the best you can at it. The other kid loves to cook. Just do the best at it. Don't settle for being something you don't want to be. Like, oh, I have to be an accountant, or I have to be a stockbroker, and I don't want to do that because I'd rather do my art. Well, then do your art and then do the best at it, so that that's who you are. Don't settle and do something else. I think we were told in the 80s you had to settle and do something you weren't really good at, and that's terrible advice. And that stalled my career. But I mean, I got back to it. I became, I got writing when I was 30, and of course, I felt like I was way behind everybody else, but I caught up quickly.
Well, I think one of the other things that underlies all this is that you obviously have a tremendous work ethic. You want to speak about that and how important that is if you're going to be a solo performer?
Oh, yes. So definitely, um, go do things that are uncomfortable, and be willing to travel and to drive, and also be also very, very good about showing up on time. And have a lot of cushions for making sure that you're not that late person. And work ethic, I mean, do things that nobody else wants to do. Be prepared, be helpful. I mean, don't burn yourself out either, but don't be lazy. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a lazy person. I'm always willing, just like, okay, I want to do that. I want to do that. Uh, I don't know. For example, uh, the teaching of the elementary school is an hour and 20 minutes away from where I live. Now, some people would have said, "Oh, that's too far." But then I look at the big picture and I said, "Well, that's an opportunity to grow and to and to do networking and to work at a school and all that stuff." So I never thought. But a lot of people here don't want to drive. They don't want to drive at night. They don't want to drive over the mountains. They don't want to drive over the snow. They don't want to drive over this. And I don't really think it's a lot of fun to drive in sideways snow over a 7,000-foot peak, with slick roads, but I do it. I do it. Um, so I mean, it's also a willingness to put yourself out there and to go through the conditions. I went through hurricanes and rainstorms and all these things in North Carolina, where the only way I was able to see the road was because of the lightning strikes, all by myself. And that builds character and that builds strength. And it was the same car, that I went through those rainstorms with. I still have now, and me and my car, we're together forever. So
Well,
um,
that's pretty amazing. I think one of the great things that resonates, I think, with a lot of folks is that you just don't give up, lady. And I think that's incredible. And you believe in yourself. And I think
no,
probably, it's interesting talking about things that we want to do. I've joked for years that there are two kinds of people in the world. There are have tos and want tos. Do I have to do this?
I have to.
Do I have to do that? I want to do this. I want to do that. Um, and one of the things that dawned on me this time last year is that I wanted to do a podcast, and I wanted to do it with people that have done kind of what I've been doing in different places that all have a different backstory. And everybody's backstory is fascinating to me. This is incredible. And I'm really grateful that Michael just happened to say, hey, you need to get in touch with my friend Alice Osborn. But she's been doing this and she's really great. And as I said, when I went to the site, started listening to some of the videos and the songs, I was blown away. I'm really impressed.
Well, you're
And I
so.
think probably the greatest thing about all of this is that this is something you decided to do for Alice. And I
Mhm.
hope anybody that listens to this podcast or watches it later on will say, you know what? I want to have something I can do for me too.
That's right. Nobody told me to do this. Nobody said, hey, I got a lot of pushback, actually, a lot of pushback. And my kids were supportive. My husband was not. The kids were just, well, they were like, I don't know what mom's doing, but that's cool. And they had to come with me to my gigs sometimes, and they had fun. But yeah, that was, husband was like, well, that's interesting. I guess that's okay. what are you doing? You think you're going to be famous. I'm like, that's not the point. I'm doing this because I love doing it. You love to do your things. I like to do my things. It's all cool. But yeah, so I wasn't in an environment where I see a lot of spouses support show up at their other spouses, their partner's gigs. And that was not the case for me. He never showed up. So I had to always do it, have it from my own sense of strength, and to do it myself. And I didn't have that support. So um, it's it's kind of nice to have friends here, and then they show up for you, or they request an original song. And but I would have to say there's more support for me here than back in North Carolina.
I completely get that. We won't go into this on the podcast, but I agree about 167%.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
anyway, fantastic. So if people want to get in touch, aliceosborn.com is about your writing and the sort of the business career. aliceosbornmusic.com is how they can reach out to you. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it just changed last week, so it's all new, and I still have to change everything. So
I understand. Well, Alice, this has been a fabulous podcast, Miss. Thank you so very much. I've enjoyed every second of this, and I think our listeners will too. You've been listening to the Band of One podcast. I am Riley Wilson, and thanks for joining us. If you have ideas for future podcasts in the future, please get in touch with us at facebook.com/Band of One podcast, or you can simply contact me off my music page, which is Riley at guitarmadesimpler.com. Thanks. I'll see you next time.